This is the story of my nightmare. I was definitely addicted to Klonopin. I'd used many varieties of drugs throughout my life, but never gotten addicted. Not to pain pills, not to cigarettes, not to speed, not black tar. But I was definitely, hopelessly, addicted physically and mentally to Klonopin. This is my experience. Hopefully you will learn from it. I have suffered from insomnia since I was a child and have been seeing psychologists since I was young. I have been diagnosed with ADHD. My whole life I had been okay with the funny sleep schedule until I went to college. The grueling schedule was too hard for me, especially because I was unable to keep a regular sleep schedule. I decided to do the rational thing and talk to a psychologist. I told him I was smoking pot to help myself sleep and was tired of self-medicating. He put me on Ambien. This worked fine for 2 months. I asked about the fine print on the bottom of Ambien commercials that said not to take Ambien for more than a week, so he switched me to Ativan, lorazepam. I slept well, but not long, so he switched me to Klonopin. At first, life was beautiful. I could sleep 8 hours and feel well rested in the morning. I started at 2 milligrams a night, 4 times the recommended starting dosage. After 2 months, he upped my dose to 3 milligrams a night. The bottle said to take every night, so this is what I did. After 1 month at this dosage, I started forgetting things, a lot of things. I lost things I would never lose, my backpack, my keys, my cell phone. I told the psychologist that I was experiencing memory loss. He assured me that this was a normal reaction to my body going into withdrawal from my dosage not increasing. I recommended that I up the dose to 3.5 milligrams a night. I asked him when he would plan on keeping the amount consistent. He said around 10 to 20 milligrams a night I wouldn't be complaining of these symptoms. He probably was right. I wouldn't be complaining of these symptoms. I would be brain dead and unable to communicate at all. Well, I was freaked out and chose not to up my dose. I looked at my only reasonable option, which was to drop my morning classes that semester, as I could no longer hear my alarm clock in the morning, and never was able to get up before noon, even when people tried to wake me up. I would just fall back asleep immediately and not remember being woken up. When I went to drop my classes, I realized that I was signed up for classes that I hadn't ever remembered to go to. To quote Hunter S. Thompson, how long had this weird shit been going on? I decided to try and taper off, as I read that stopping suddenly could result in seizures and even death. Tapering off involved cutting a silver with the razor blade of one of the pills, and have a silver less every few days. This didn't work so well. I had been doing this for a month and was miserable. I was forgetting to eat, forgetting to call people, to take care of basic responsibilities. I decided it was time to try another way. I heard from a friend that alcohol would lower my seizure threshold and allow me to quit twice as fast. I tried taking half my dose, totaling 1.5 milligrams, and drinking some hard liquor. I awoke a few hours later and thought it was safe to drink some more. I woke up to my then girlfriend running over my foot with her car. Apparently, I had been blacked out for a while and done a lot of things that I didn't remember at all. I decided to stick to just tapering the Klonopin with Klonopin. I read that if I cross-tapered to Valium, quitting would be easier due to its longer half-life. Of course, the psychologist was more than willing to help. I was cutting down my dosage, but unable to remember large parts of my life. I lost 40 pounds, putting me down to 110. I'm 5'7", and this is way underweight for me, because I couldn't remember to eat. Lost friends because I was a flake and emotionally unstable. Lost a relationship because I was too moody. I needed help. I was smoking pot to hang out with stoners and therefore remember to eat. This actually helped me keep weight on, so I kept hanging out with my stoner friends. One day they were taking 2CI and I decided to join them. For the first time in 6 months, I could see my life for the mess that it was. I was losing everything that mattered to me, all direction and even my identity. In a psychedelic state, I started remembering things. I had lent my computer to some friends who wanted to take it into the hot tub and became aware of many things I'd done in my stupor. I fixed a lot in those 6 hours, but the benzo fog came back. The month that followed was a total blur. I was so unstable that it is a miracle I survived. I had dilated pupils most of the time and looked manic. I was even approached by people on the street who thought they were recognizing that I was manic. They offered me their medication. I knew I was in trouble. I even tried to cut off my hand because my girlfriend told me not to touch her ever again. My life was literally a nightmare. I think what was really putting me over the edge was the lack of restful sleep. I would just pass out and then come to, never reaching a deep sleep, never dreaming. I attended a family funeral, and when everyone saw me, they barely knew who I was. I was cranky and nearly flipped whenever they would try and wake me up before 2 in the afternoon. They did the sane and logical thing and sent me to detox. This was the worst imaginable hell. I looked worse than the heroin addicts who were very concerned for me. They kept telling the nurses that I either was on speed or needed more tranquilizers. On my 4th day of detox with phenobarbital, I started to seize. I ran to a nurse and put her hand on my heart. I didn't need to say anything. She immediately gave me more phenobarbital. I barely slept and had horrible distortions of perception. My eyes were so sensitive that I mistook a light at least 100 feet from my window for the sun and thought that night was day. Luckily, I started gaining weight and got my feelings back all at once. A week later, I found myself in a 6-month residential rehab. No one believed that I wasn't abusing my medication. It really is hard to believe for most people that all this could happen from taking medication as directed. Be careful. I lost a lot, and it could happen to you. If I would have just stuck to the natural substances instead of trusting my mental health professional, I probably wouldn't be in this position right now. In retrospect, research anything a doctor tells you and get a second opinion. All prescription sleeping pills are addictive, and most doctors don't want to admit this. My views of biopsychiatry are very skeptic. I used to want to be a psychologist, and now I can safely say that any doctors telling you that your emotions can be fixed are absolutely full of shit. If you are bipolar or schizophrenic or severely depressed, that is different. But ADD and ADHD, insomnia, anxiety, and many other mental illnesses simply cannot be fixed for any length of time with drugs. Listen to your body. Exercising daily, proper nutrition, and doing what I love has helped me to balance myself, and I don't suffer from my mental illnesses anymore. By the age of 20, I was an experienced drug user, specializing in benzo use. People in the past noticed my high affinity for pills. Naturally, when my friend at the time who was a neuroscience major told me he got a pill that worked strong for 8 to 12 hours, I was interested. I tried 5 pills, and then a few months later we made a plan to order bottles online from the same research company he used. I got 9 bottles and he got 1. I assured him and my boyfriend I would not use them often, and it was a relief to my boyfriend who would not have to pick up Xanax anymore from a sketchy dealer. I began dosing with 1/4 of a pill. Within weeks, it was a full pill, and before 3 months, it was 3 or 4 0.75 pills a day. To give you an understanding of how insane this is, let me put this into perspective. My friend used to do heroin. I gave him one of the pills, and he said he was straight, but he almost died from half a dose because he was on methadone. I had to literally hold his head for 10 hours and thought he was slipping away. My other friend took a 1/4 pill in a separate instance and was blacked out in New York City. After 2 hours, we went home. Finally, just to show you the strength of these pills, my boyfriend, who is 6'5", takes half a pill and is out for 12 hours within 30 minutes. My point is that I had a serious problem. I remember drinking a full bottle of wine after taking at least 3 pills. At a concert, I took 8 pills and smoked weed 1/4 a day. I had my first seizure in the summer when I finally noticed I went through 8 bottles in only a few months. It happened in the middle of the day. I decided not to take as much that day and I only took a half a pill. While watching TV with my boyfriend, apparently I stood up, started mumbling, peed on myself, then fell and began convulsing. I awoke in the hospital to find I had a grand mal seizure. When I got out of the hospital, I began using shortly after again. I was so addicted I was not registering the fact that I almost died, but now my boyfriend noticed how many pills were gone. I finally surrendered and stopped lying to myself and went to rehab. I had 3 seizures while withdrawing. Normally people are put in detox for a week, but I was in detox with a taper for 2.5 weeks. I used to be addicted to MDA, MDPV, MDMA, and used them every day for years almost. I used to use opiates as a teen, and I can honestly say the withdrawals from Clonazolam were 10 times worse than any pain I have ever felt. I was close to death and needed an IV. I did not eat for 9 days. I was terrified. The neurologist at the hospital told me I was lucky to be alive and that I essentially destroyed my central nervous system. I lost my job, friends, and the respect of my boyfriend. My friend who studies neuroscience had a seizure before we ordered more pills. At the time, I thought it was from all the cocaine he did, but now I would say it is from the Clonazolam if I had to guess. These pills are so addictive that 6 months of being clean, I still crave them. I have vivid drug dreams, and I think about these pills every day of my life. Of course, I set myself up for failure by ordering so many, but you can trick yourself to thinking something is a good idea, especially when it's a drug. Similar to opiates, I not only lied to my loved ones, I lied to myself without any awareness of the effect on my health. But the scariest thing that I never felt on opiates or any other drug was when I eventually knew these pills were killing me, that I would have another grand mal seizure, lose everything, and did not care if I died. I ignored my most basic human nature and needs. I did not know I went through 8 bottles because my brain did not want me to let anything in the way of my heavy drug use. I feel seriously afraid for anyone using this pill in powdered form, as the dose needs to be super tiny. Like multiple doctors who saw me in my chart, it was a miracle I was alive and never alone when I had a seizure. I should not be here now, but since I am, I will spend my entire life spreading the danger of this research chemical to whoever I can. I'm right now on day 5 of my horrific withdrawal from Flunitrazolam, and I'm only now able to even type anything on the PC. It was horrible but rather quick. Today I only feel maybe slightly weird, barely noticeable, and I'm just glad I survived this. So to start off, my previous experience of benzo withdrawal was from Clonazepam with alcohol, which was about twice as long as this one. About maybe 2 months ago, I made the stupid decision to buy some RC benzos online, including 250 milligrams of Flunitrazolam. I soon ordered 500 milligrams more since I liked it more than the others. I've tried all common prescription benzos, plus Alprazolam, Clonazolam, and Flunitrazolam, and the latter one is probably the most addictive benzo I've tried. It also has a potency comparable to LSD. 0.2 milligrams would feel like maybe as strong as 0.8 milligrams of Xanax. In the beginning, if I would dose any more than 0.2 milligrams, I would get horrible rebound anxiety about 5 hours after dosing when it was wearing off, so this is extremely powerful. However, I kept using it, and I try to stay safe by only taking another dose when I felt sober again, which was a huge mistake, since the benzo still isn't out of your system when you feel sober. So I did that a few weeks, maybe a month, during which time my tolerance would go up so much that towards the end, I would take maybe 0.8 to 1 milligram 2 to 3 times a day. It is the most pleasant benzo ever. It feels very similar to Xanax, but more euphoric, and it lasted about twice as long. I also never blacked out on it, even when taking huge doses like 1 milligram. I would usually just feel extremely relaxed, happy, and very hungry on it, which caused me to gain about 4 kilograms during that month, but I probably lost these again during the withdrawal. However, over that month, I noticed that I would generally get more and more depressed. It seems like regular benzo use increases depression, since I felt that as well during the 35 days I was taking Clonazepam. I would also use it when I was going anywhere, since it just made me feel more carefree and nice than any other benzo. During this time, I would notice that I get nauseous about 8 to 10 hours after dosing, which was probably already withdrawal. But my rude awakening came last Friday. So it was Friday evening and I was just lying in my bed feeling extremely depressed. After that, I would suddenly get some anxiety, and it dawns on me. This is obviously withdrawal setting in. I was terrified since my finals were in about a month, so I couldn't go to a clinic. I decided to not redose and just wait it out. Well, I dosed 200 micrograms out of fear I could get a seizure, after which I took a shower to calm me somewhat down and then lie down in my bed, at which point the withdrawal was already pretty strong. The 200 micrograms, which would be a normal dose, did absolutely nothing. This was probably the worst night. Within the next few hours, my heart rate would rise to about 120. I'd get a strong tinnitus, my whole body would just feel like it was overheating, and I felt a strong head pressure. I started seeing crazy open and closed eye visual patterns, almost psychedelic-like patterns. I quickly took 3 grams of phenibut and 4 grams of GABA powder to reduce the risk of a seizure. While weighing it out, I noticed that my coordination was really bad, and I just felt like I was underwater. Surprisingly, I had no tremors at all during the whole withdrawal, but my movements were rather jerky and uncoordinated. The The scariest thing about benzo withdrawal is how it just always keeps changing. Sometimes I would get extremely hot and sweaty, then my heart would start racing. My tinnitus sounds would suddenly change and the withdrawal would get weaker and come back again in waves. Sometimes during that night I would feel pretty okay, other times I felt like I would get a seizure at any moment. I would keep my phone next to me thinking about if I should call an ambulance. When I was half asleep, thoughts about normal things would seem really distant and weird, and I sometimes felt like I was leaving my body for maybe a few seconds. This terrified me because I read that these were signs that a seizure was about to happen, but I survived that night without one. I surprisingly was also able to sleep for maybe 2 to 3 hours during that night, but this sleep was filled with super vivid and terrifying dreams. I somehow survived to Saturday morning, at which the withdrawal was probably at its peak. I just kept dosing 3 grams of phenibut every 8 hours just to prevent a seizure, but I wouldn't feel anything from the phenibut. I would try to listen to some sleep music, but music was way too loud and I would jump from any sound. Any music I would listen to would also sound extremely sad. I would also have slight audio hallucinations of people talking and sirens going off outside. I just tried to lie in bed in the middle, away from any hard objects just in case I would get a seizure. Getting up and waking felt extremely weird and uncomfortable. My body felt really stiff and my skin on my feet would almost hurt when I was walking, almost like I had a sunburn. I would often shower for 40 minutes just so that the sensation of the water and the sound would cover up the terrifying effects of the withdrawal, but I had to stop because I felt like I was overheating and cold water would make my heart race even more. At this point, I would even get borderline psychotic. At the worst, I thought I somehow poisoned my whole family with lead by accident. Some things that barely made me worry on the normal state would make me panic extremely in withdrawal, since it just seemed so real. However, I stopped worrying or caring about things like COVID-19 or some girl texting me back because all of these things were absolutely irrelevant compared to just getting through the withdrawal. I thought I would give up anything or even cut off one of my fingers if it would make the withdrawal go away. This Saturday, my brother was visiting, and I told him I was in withdrawal just in case I get seizures. I think Sunday, 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. was the worst. The withdrawal wasn't getting worse, but I thought I couldn't take it anymore. I felt extremely restless and asked my brother if he could call a doctor or the ambulance while walking like crazy up and down in the room. At about 2 a.m. we decided to take a walk, and I was just walking extremely fast for about an hour. I couldn't stand still. During this walk, I had horrifying thoughts and felt extremely hopeless. I thought if this wouldn't get better soon, I had no other options than committing suicide since I couldn't take any more of it. It felt so real, and I was terrified thinking about how my suicide would affect others and that I didn't want to die yet. I just couldn't take feeling that way. After the walk at 3 a.m., I took 0.5 milligrams of Xanax, which didn't do much. But that, in combination with the exhaustion from the walk, enabled me to sleep a bit during the next night, during which the dreams were somewhat less vivid and terrifying. I also tried to drink something with sugar just to get some energy, but it was extremely difficult to drink anything and pretty much impossible to eat. Over the weekend, I ate about 2 bananas. During this night, the visual hallucinations were much weaker, but I started to have some random jerky body movement about once an hour. My arm would just jerk, or I would even suddenly just say "ah" for a second and didn't really have control over it. I kept having these jerky movements for about the next 36 hours, which I spent almost exclusively lying in bed and doing nothing, since everything was just extremely overstimulating. I couldn't look at my phone and answer text messages because I was too anxious to do that, so I just lied in bed, 90% of the time awake, and at about 4 p.m. on Sunday I felt similar to 3 a.m. after I took the Xanax. It made me happy that the withdrawal reduced so much in just 13 hours, and I got more hopeful I could make it alive. On Monday, I could even talk with other people in my family, even though it was still very overstimulating and I would just get really anxious and sweaty after 30 minutes and I had to go back to my room again. On the night from Monday to Tuesday, I took 0.75 milligrams of Xanax, which surprisingly killed the withdrawal completely for about 5 hours, but I was just annoyed that I wasn't tired and wasted these 5 hours without getting any sleep. The withdrawal came back mildly in the morning, at which point it was just annoying. I would just sleep until the late afternoon, still waking up every hour or so, but it was much easier to sleep. Fast forward to 3 a.m. on Wednesday, at which point I'm writing this report and I feel almost normal again. I just got a light wave during writing it, but nothing that bothered me. I think I should be pretty much back to normal within 1 to 2 days, maybe just feeling slightly off for a few days, but I'm glad I got through this. I never want to use benzos again after this experience. I just think they are too addictive for me and I would always lose control over it. I just never want to experience such a withdrawal or even worse withdrawal again, and I don't wish that kind of withdrawal on anyone. I took about 2 milligrams daily towards the end, which would probably be like 10 milligrams of Xanax, and I consider myself pretty lucky that I didn't have a seizure, since other people reported they got seizures from this particular benzo. And as I said, please don't do it like me. Go to a clinic or at least taper off. I myself was scared that I would just die from a seizure in my bedroom, and this is how my life would end. I love Xanax. It makes me feel happy and frees me from my anxiety. It makes my day more productive, but I love to have some when I'm drinking. It seems the concern with this drug is the withdrawal symptoms. I had been taking 2 or 3 2-milligram bars on most days for some time after easily getting a prescription for them on the internet. I was in a pill phase which included Valium, Vicodin, etc., although trying to not be obviously stupid with the wrong combos. At the time of the incident, I was only taking Xanax for the past several weeks. So anyway, I had a ton of work at the time, was very busy for a couple days, and my dog was attacked by a friend's dog and wounds became infected. So I was stressed, unrested, and not eating properly, going 1,000 miles an hour. Ah, the American life. I rushed to get my work done and then drove 400 miles to the Bay Area to the pup's animal hospital. I had no Xanax, booze, or anything for 3 days. I then dropped dead weight in a market and had a grand mal seizure. I was out cold for 10 minutes, flipping like a fish. When I came to, my brother had driven from his house to the market after my friend with me called him, and he called the ambulance. When they arrived, I still didn't know my age when asked and felt lifeless. I have never felt more tired or confused. Every muscle in my body had clenched as hard as possible. By the time we made it to the ER, I was feeling better, was given a salt solution to prevent another seizure, a CAT scan, and then released. CAT scan and MRI were clear. The ER reported the seizure to the DMV as required by California law, and my driver's license was suspended. It took me a year to get it back after many neurologist visits, EEG tests, a lot of DMV red tape, and waiting. As far as the doc knows, this wasn't epilepsy. I've had no seizure before or in the 2 years since. The seizure was caused by my body withdrawing from the drug. If I had weaned myself off, it wouldn't have occurred. After the seizure, I had shiver-like twitches for 2 months and irregular EEG tests for 4 months. That's how long it took my body to free itself of the drug. It cost me my driver's license for a year, a few $1,000s for hospital bills. My auto insurance rates doubled, and it scared the shit out of me. If I was driving when the seizure occurred, as I was 5 minutes before it happened, I could have killed someone. My doc said that perhaps Xanax could be a useful drug for me, but must be used at a normal dose and no cold turkey quitting. Tolerance builds fast with this stuff. It's addictive, so this is a tricky substance that should be used carefully. I didn't see this coming. I was prescribed Xanax for anxiety. Being depressed and suicidal, I was looking for trouble, so I started off with 4 milligrams. It was the strongest feeling of euphoria that I had felt. At that point in my life, I'd only tried weed before. The euphoria was short-lived and I got really tired very quickly. I slept from 4 p.m. to noon the next day. It surely helped me out with anxiety and I settled down with a normal dose. The benefits from the drug was short-lived and soon health problems started to surface. Also, a weird kind of addiction took hold, as I found myself in a situation where I could not get a high from the meds. No matter how much I took, it was not enough. 4 years have passed, and during that period, I never missed a day. I have been clean now for 6 months. My memory started to fade very quickly, and I cannot recall almost anything during the 4-year period. My doses went up to 12 milligrams a day. All I can say is, it ruined my health. I quit working out. I got more depressed than ever. Missing a dose caused the worst pain I can imagine, the worst panic I can ever get, and forgetting to go see the doctor and get a prescription. Missing a dose ended up by calling an ambulance and get a shot. The whole world felt heavy, and each movement caused tremendous pain. For years, I felt like having a bad flu. My eyes were constantly burning. I haven't felt that annoyed by anything else. My tolerance was so high that I could not get the satisfaction needed by taking the pills. I just could not wait for the pills to absorb. I started to snort about 2 milligrams at once. After a while, I was doing this every hour, and believe it or not, I got a rush from it. At that point, I started to abuse also much more potent benzos. Trying to get off from the drugs resulted in near-lethal doses. The less I managed to take during withdrawal, the more I took when going through a relapse. I gave up withdrawing about 3 times. I kept on taking this drug for a year when I finally decided to get clean, as I had no more emotions left. The withdrawal process was 5 months long, and now being 6 months clean, I'm starting to feel better. I am amazed how much stronger I am physically, how my emotions open up again, but still, I have a lot to deal with. My body is aching all over from time to time. Concentration is still very bad, and fatigue is a big issue. The withdrawal can cause phenomenal complaints, and so many of them at once, that mostly I felt suicidal just because I was physically feeling so bad, in pain, and drained out of energy.